Ahoy there! On the 12th of January in 2025, some family members and I went back to Detroit, to the Detroit Auto Show, after like a 5-year absence. So the last time we ever went to the auto show was before COVID, and I actually recorded the 2019 show during the earlier years of my channel. But a lot has changed in the 6-year gap. Although the auto show returned a couple of years after COVID, it was held in September instead of January. The showrunners were never going to get around start times of school. So for 2025, the auto show was renamed from the North American International Auto Show to the Detroit Auto Show, and it was moved back to January. And once I knew I was going, I decided it was the best time to try out my new camera. This is the Vivitar VEC XX100. It shoots video at up to 4K 30 FPS and takes pictures at up to 54 megapixels. It also included 2 lenses, a macro lens and a wide-angle lens. I've always been on the fence about Vivitar since they're a budget camera company, but I was interested in it since it could shoot video at 1080p and 60 frames per second. A welcome upgrade over my phone, a Samsung Galaxy A02s, whose camera could only shoot 1080p video at 30 FPS. Plus it was a gift I got for Christmas. Traveling alongside my dad and my brother, we went to Detroit, which was still in full Lions fever due to the football team clinching the playoffs and winning the NFC North for 2 years in a row. But because it was January, that meant it was snowing, so I minimized its outdoor usage to keep it from getting snowed on. Once we arrived, I started snapping photos, testing out the normal and wide-angle lenses. This camera shoots some very high-resolution images, but in a 4:3 aspect ratio and in JPEG format. I'm not the biggest fan of JPEGs because of their compression artifacts, but the pictures were so high-res that it wasn't very noticeable anyway. The resolution for the images were 8640 by 6480. That's nice, but I wish I knew how to set it to 16:9. This isn't 2005. Screwing around with the lenses, I determined the macro lens was not optimal for full shots of cars and that it seemed better suited to finer details and close-range shots. But the macro lens also serves as the adapter for the wide-angle lens, which can't be screwed on by itself. Thankfully, it didn't have a huge impact on the pictures I took, but I did notice the lights reflecting on the lens with the wide-angle lens installed. It's rather distracting, but I don't know if that's because the lens sucks or if I somehow got it dirty. I will say it was fun to screw in and unscrew the lenses. I felt like James Bond attaching his suppressor to his Walther PPK. Testing out its 1080p 60 capabilities, it did the job, but the video quality took a nosedive when zooming in and out. This is a digital camera after all. I didn't test its 4K capabilities because I'm not interested in recording camera footage at 30 FPS. I also need to remember to keep the damn thing in focus with the shutter button. What irked me the most was that the footage I captured was time-stamped. The camera did allow me to turn that off, but it's per profile. Timestamps had to be toggled off for both still images and videos. I also spotted some dropped frames, but I can't tell if that's a fault with the monitor that I use on my computer or a fault with the camera. I'd never be able to tell because the built-in display on the camera only updates at 30 Hz even when shooting 60 Hz footage. It can also capture audio, but not only did I forget to turn this on, I found the captured audio to be unremarkable. If I wanted to field this thing in the future and capture audio that doesn't sound like ass, I might consider buying a lapel mic and attaching the receiver to the microphone output on the side. So while the VEC gets a passing grade for its video and photo abilities, it's still a cheap camera from Vivitar at the end of the day. Build quality was never on the agenda. This is made from some grade A cheap plastic where you can feel the imperfections during manufacturing. I actually had to clip a lanyard to one of its lanyard hooks so I didn't drop it, because I felt like if I did drop it, it'd shatter into a million pieces. The camera only feels sturdy with the lenses attached. It's also one of those cheapo cameras that happens to come from somewhere in China. If the broken English in the instruction manual didn't clue you in, the fonts used on the screen and in the timestamps will. Also, the camera's identifiers on the front of the box is a sticker. But if there's one fatal flaw with this camera, it's its battery. I only managed to get less than 2 hours of battery life while out and about. I charged the thing overnight and, well, it was running low on battery by the time we went to the lower level at the show. For me, testing the camera at the auto show was a good way of figuring out how well this thing performed. So this next segment is a summary of my experience at the Detroit Auto Show. Arriving in the city and taking the People Mover to Huntington Place, the show floor felt almost lifeless. Sure, there were people around on the show floor, but a lot of the allure of the auto show just wasn't there. I feel like that has to do with the creative stagnation surrounding the car industry today. Cars are less interesting than they were even in 2019 with the overabundance of SUVs, lack of manufacturer representation, and the general consensus that electric cars are the future when nobody's buying them. Now, that's not to say there weren't any interesting cars on display, though. Even some newer cars like the C8 Corvette and the VW ID Buzz caught my attention. There was the Chrysler Halcyon concept, which is basically Chrysler saying, "Hey guys, we still totally make cars, by the way." There was also this Chevy Bright Drop RV, which is an electric RV built on the electric successor to the Express vans. I got to sit in a few Toyotas while I was there. I either sat in the new Camry or the Crown, and I took advantage of my camera's flip-out display to take a selfie to show off how short the roof is. I don't think Toyota took us Americans into account when designing the Crown. At least, I think I was in the Crown. Buick brought back the Wildcat name for its next concept, which doesn't look like a crossover, but it's definitely going to be an EV. One of the more interesting cars I saw was the Ineos Grenadier, an SUV similar to old Nissan Pathfinders or Land Rovers. It was designed in Austria, built in France, and named after a London pub owned by the company. But the crazy thing was that this car is being sold in the US. There's some dealership in Michigan selling them right now. Out of everything I saw at the show, there was a higher emphasis on car culture. Several custom cars were on display on the show floor, including a handful of cars from film and TV, like the Volkswagen New Beetle from Austin Powers and The Spy Who Shagged Me, the Ferrari 308 from Magnum P.I., Kit from Knight Rider, the Jeep from Jurassic Park, and the Ferrari California from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But what really caught my eye was this Bayside Blue beauty, an R34 Nissan Skyline GTR. This is one of the cars that people of my age range dream of standing next to, let alone drive. I was not worthy to stand in the presence of such a legendary Japanese sports car. But one of the guys in the modded Detroit tent next to this car mentioned there was another one on the lower level, along with dozens of other custom cars. While I did get this wide-angle shot of the lower level, my camera's battery was low, so I switched to my phone camera for the rest of the time I was there. I did find the other R34 the guy mentioned, with a bunch of other cool custom cars downstairs. The cars I saw down there included a custom Dodge Challenger made into a convertible, an R33 Skyline sedan, a Supra, yes, an honest-to-God Supra, a Ford Mustang with a two-tone color, whatever the hell this Subaru is, a donked Chevy Impala SS known as Dirty Sprite, a lightly and tastefully tuned 370Z, mwah, a dubbed-out Dodge Magnum that would be at home in Midnight Club 3, a Subaru Impreza straight out of Need for Speed Pro Street, a Mercury ASC McLaren Mustang, a VIP-style Lexus, Toyota Celsior, a tricked-out Honda Accord, and a custom Saturn SL, just to name a few. A lot of cool stuff to see both up and down. Still, it's a shame that the auto industry is so boring nowadays. After finishing up at the auto show, we got back on the People Mover and made a beeline for Mexican Town. Our family auto show tradition was to get lunch in Mexican Town. We went to grab enchiladas at Lupita's Taqueria, or that was the plan. They were packed that day and only took cash. We didn't have any cash on hand, so we were out of luck. Instead, we went across the street into the corner to Taqueria El Rey. My dad and my brother ordered tamales, while I ordered a delicious mega quesadilla. Everything was delicious. We had a feast, and there were no survivors. So, while I was disappointed with the auto show this year, I learned a lot about the capabilities and limitations of my new camera. While the VEC XX100 is objectively an average camera, it's good enough for what I wanted to do. Really, the camera's biggest Achilles heel is the battery. If I'm going to use this thing again in the future, I'm going to hook up an external battery pack to it so it doesn't die on me during normal use. I'll probably have to Velcro it somewhere to the camera that doesn't block my hand, the battery door, or the tripod threading. As for the show, it's a shell of its former self thanks to our SUV-centric market and every big company chasing Tesla by shoving electric cars down our throats. Now, I'm not entirely opposed to EVs, but I'll only consider one if the infrastructure is there, and if Elon isn't the world's smartest idiot. Personal biases aside, I had a good time getting photos and video from the auto show. But I'm not going to get any of these new cars since I still don't have a license. Sorry about that. Anyway, did you visit the auto show this year? What were some of the best non-SUV electric cars you saw? Leave a comment. Squiddy the Kid signing off. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.